Hey everyone, and welcome to Jesus the Legend. Today's a very special episode because we have Jason Clark as our guest. He's a writer and lead communicator at A Family Story Ministries. He's a speaker, and his mission is to encourage sons and daughters to grow sure in the love of an always good Heavenly Father. He and his wife Karen live in North Carolina with their 3 children, and really, who they are, it says on the website, A Family Story is a collective of Christian creatives and storytellers who are committed to sharing the message of God's love for every individual. They say their core message is a simple truth that God is love, His love is always good, and every human being exists to grow in the confidence of His love. Tell me, how much better can you get than that? He's written a few books, I think 5 actually. God is Not in Control, Leaving and Finding Jesus, Prone to Love, Surrendered and Untamed. Again, their website is afamilystory.org. And then he's got a great kind of community growing with a podcast called Rethinking God with Tacos. I believe they're on social media. They've got a Facebook group. So make sure to check them out. I hope this episode blesses you. You guys are awesome.
Welcome to Jesus the Legend, a podcast exploring the profound truth that all Scripture points to Christ. From Genesis to Revelation, every story, prophecy, and promise finds its fulfillment in Jesus. Join us on this journey, discovering how reading through the lens of Christ transforms our understanding, deepens our relationship, and reveals God's redemptive plan for all of humanity. And now, here's your host, Ken Sullivan.
Yeah, hey man, Jason Clark, I can't believe you're here. This is awesome.
Hey, good to meet you.
Good to meet you too, man. So before I hit record, we were talking about you being a Canadian. So what were you saying there again?
Yeah. I was talking to a fellow from Nova Scotia, fellow Canuck.
Yeah.
I was born in Ontario, Sarnia, right across from Port Huron, Michigan, a few hours west of Toronto. My mom's American, dad's Canadian, and so lived in the U.S. a little bit in those formative years, but all my high school years were in Vancouver Island, British Columbia.
Wow, Vancouver. Yeah, Vancouver's beautiful for sure.
Yeah.
We lived in London, Ontario for about 4 years, worked at a church there and did some ministry with a guy, traveled with him. And so, yeah, Ontario's great too, but we're another, as you know, 2,000 kilometers east from there. So
you're way out. I've never been to Nova Scotia. It's on my bucket list. I'd love to get out.
Oh, dude, consider this an invite. Like anytime you're coming, there's a bed here for you guys.
Awesome.
Yeah.
It's epic. It's beautiful, right? Kind of vast.
Yeah,
would it remind you maybe of, I've been to Iceland, or Scotland?
Probably. I mean, we're pretty close to Maine, so I think we'd be kind of similar to Maine. We're just a little northeast of Maine, so it would be probably similar kind of geography to that, I would think. But
right,
yeah, man, that's crazy. So I'm literally like, I'm so excited to have you on here, and I don't want to talk too much. I want to hear your story, but I stumbled upon your podcast a few years ago, heard some great stuff on there, but honestly, I haven't read any of your books yet. I will get some. But basically, as I kept hearing your name, I kept hearing the podcast name, you'd pop up here, you'd pop up there. And then I heard that you were heavily influenced by Bill Johnson, which is great. You have a really charismatic background. I thought, okay, this dude is like getting better all the time. And then I heard you're a musician, and I can get with that. And then I heard you're Canadian. It's like, this dude's the whole package. I get asked this dude on. So,
that's awesome.
So yeah, it's a gift, man. I had to check my calendar. I thought, is it December? Because it feels like a gift, man, to have this dude on here. But
I'm looking forward to getting to know you. In Bible college, you just described, there was a girl that described me who ended up being my wife, Karen. But she described me as the perfect man, and she basically listed, he's a musician, he's a Canadian, he plays hockey, he's but the Canadian was pretty important, that part.
Yes. So is she Canadian as well, or?
She was Canadian, yeah.
Oh, good.
No, my wife isn't. No, this girl that described me as the
right.
My wife, I met her in Western New York, Bible College, Elam. is the name of the school, and
Yep.
have a lot of history there. My grandparents met there. Were the first graduating class. My parents met there, and I met my wife there. So
So
that's
here's
that
a crazy.
charismatic roots, right?
Yeah, here's a crazy thing. So when I was living in London, Ontario, I was working at a church up there as a youth pastor,
Yeah.
and the senior pastor sent me to Elam for, I think it was only like a weekend or something, but they're doing some sort of like youth pastor kind of
Uh-huh.
thing.
Yeah.
That was a lot of years ago, but yeah, I've actually been
You've
down
been
in the
yeah,
area. So
there you go. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, I played a lot of hockey in London as a kid, right?
Oh
That's
yeah, it's a big hockey town, man. Big
yeah,
hockey
yeah,
town.
it is. Yeah, yeah.
So
But
so yeah, man, like I'm just honestly, I'm just so excited to have you on. You're what I've been following from you is and it just really strikes such a chord with me is you the one non-negotiable for you is that God is good all the
yeah,
time.
come on, yeah,
And you've got this ministry, a familystory.org. You've written like what, 5 books or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
You're
Come
doing
on.
stuff with Baxter. It's crazy. You're just blowing up and killing it.
I'm looking forward to the conversation. I went through the list of you've had David Artman on. I saw that was, is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I
But I
had
went
David
to
on.
the titles of your podcast and thought, oh, we're going to get along good.
Well, I saw you're doing some stuff with John Crowder too, and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I don't know where that line is when you can say they're your friend. I mean, I've
yeah,
known John for years.
yeah,
Years, oh gosh, 20 had to be 20 years ago. We had a little church here, and John and his whole family came and preached at our church. They stayed at our house overnight. Um, I, I can't say I like we're best buddies. I don't know if that constitutes saying we're friends. Either way, I know John and us, back in his real wild heyday, we were
uh-huh.
right there with it, rolling just as fast as anybody else up and down the aisles, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I loved John from a distance back then.
right, right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I loved him from a distance, but what actually drew me to Bill Johnson, because I did grow up in the charismatic church, was I had seen a lot of crazy,
Yeah,
which you will in the charismatic church. Of course, I'm madly in love with a whole lot of what they gave to me, especially around the nearness and the presence, the
yes,
friendship, the obviously the supernatural,
yeah,
the fact that the kingdom is for today.
yeah,
I'm grateful. But what drew me to Bill is I'd navigated also some of the wild aspects of being in the charismatic church.
yeah,
Lots of odd things. And Bill was such a steady. He could be in a room with a whole lot of wildness, and he was comfortable just being Bill. And he was
yes,
steady and stable, and there was nothing wacky or weird, and so that's really what first drew me. And then and his value for the presence, and the fact that he could participate wildly, and just he was normal.
yes. You know who also fits that same category is John Arnott from TACF, which I'm sure
Yeah,
you're familiar with from the 1994 thing that broke out at his church, and he's also very steady, very
yeah, yeah.
normal, very
Yeah, yeah. I hate to use that word because we're
yeah,
all normal,
yeah.
but I was a
You don't
little uncomfortable with the woman in the dress with the army boots on stomping. But
so
too much
okay, so
Canadian in me or something. I don't know.
I don't know, but so I mean, you talked about the supernatural, you talked about being influenced by Bill. Why don't you just take a minute, if you don't mind, and just kind of, where did you come from? What was your
Yeah,
upbringing? And
yeah.
you said you weren't from a real charismatic background, right? So how did you make the jump into the supernatural stuff? And that's one of the main reasons not the main reason, but one of the reasons I wanted you on here is in what I'm reading and learning over the last several years of inclusion
Yeah,
and the goodness of God and the ultimate restoration of apokatastasis.
yeah,
There's not, from what I've been exposed to, I don't see a lot of dudes who are just still into the supernatural side of things. It seems like it's a different kind of
sure,
river altogether. And
sure.
so when I started hearing this stuff about you, I'm like, oh man, I gotta know this guy.
Yeah, I love it, man. And I did grow up in the charismatic. So
Oh, you did? Okay.
yeah, but I was never comfortable. I'm
Ah,
too reserved or something. I don't know. So, but no, I grew up, with the Vineyard movement. We went down and heard Wimber when I was
mm-hmm.
probably 15 in Anaheim. There, I think is where it was, and the Toronto Vineyard thing. I was in Bible college when that was happening, and so
Yeah.
the short introduction. I grew up in a loving home. My dad was a pastor, chasing the call of God. I had a 5-year-old salvation experience with my mom at
Oh,
the
wow.
at the coffee table, and I grew up in love with Jesus. I remember at 18 on the West Coast. Being in a service, one of those services where someone gets up and says, "I did all these drugs, and then I came to Jesus." And
Mm-hmm.
testimony after testimony, I was into witchcraft, and I came to Jesus. I slept around, and Jesus saved me. And I remember
Yeah.
standing in the back and thinking, "I don't have a testimony," and immediately feeling the presence of my Heavenly Father say, "No, I actually really love yours. It's the faithfulness."
Come on.
Of my love in your life. It's the father and mother that love each other that you got to raise. And later in life, I went, man, that's the testimony you'd want. Not to belittle any
Yes.
testimony, but that's the testimony you'd want for your kids. And so,
It's so rare. Unfortunately, that
yeah,
story is so rare today. So that's just beautiful.
yeah. But along the way, and I'm sure based on the titles I've seen and the fact that you've had a conversation with David Artman, along the way, went to Bible college, couldn't make that suit fit for a lot of reasons. Ended up starting a band. I'm more a right brain than left brain. I'm an artist, and so I've been always a creative, working in creative spaces, but always connected to the church. Convinced that he loves me. Love has always been the language of our connection, but also wrestling over and over again with the lie of separation that was permeating every aspect of everything I touched.
Mm-hmm.
All of my experiences in the church were connected to both the beautiful encounter and the love of God and the connection, the great desperation of separation. For the longest time, I would say that desperation was the high watermark of spiritual maturity in the charismatic expression. My
Mm-hmm.
experience was the most desperate person in the room, especially in the charismatic church, was the
Right.
holiest person. And so I lived in this space of lack, constantly wrestling, constantly pushing the envelope. And I am an envelope pusher. And so I would get a perspective on the goodness of God. I would share it in a way that probably was young,
Yeah.
aggressive. I would see hypocrisy and I could not say something about it. So I was always on the fringe. I
Yeah.
never really quite fit in the church. I was always in fact, the band we started was called Fringe. Our
Mm-hmm.
first album was called For the Vagabond Believer. I mean, now I look back and I laugh at it. It was a lonely journey that culminated at 35. I'm 51 now, but at 35,
You're 51.
yeah, yeah.
Crazy. I'm 51 as well,
Hey, well,
actually.
you look good, man.
So do
Yeah.
you, dude. I thought you were in your 30s. I guess maybe some of the podcasts I was listening to were really old.
Yeah,
uh,
I don't know. I do got I shaved the other day. I told my wife, I said, as long as I shave, I'm young. I said, the moment I let this thing grow out, I get older every day that I
anyway,
let it
sorry,
grow.
I cut you off there.
But at 35, we'd found Bill and Bethel, and so grateful for them. What Bill gave me
Yeah.
is two beautiful things. He gave me Jesus' perfect theology, which I knew.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, when he said it, it landed in a way that I became like a dog on a bone. I will not be moved from Jesus' perfect theology. And
Right.
the second thing you've already said, God is good.
Yeah.
He's in a good mood. And if you got Jesus' perfect theology right, then you'll understand that his goodness looks like Jesus. It can't look like anything else.
Right.
And I became dogmatic in that God
Mm-hmm.
is like Jesus, that he's always good. And it took me into an encounter at 35, and I'm racing through. But this was the most significant shift in my life. I'd written one book. Every other book I've written is coming from this place.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I had a profound 2-year period where God went into hiding. And I've shared this story a lot, but maybe not with your audience. I'll just share it quickly because it'll
Yeah,
set up
please
our
take your
conversation.
time. This is all yours.
It's we were in a sweet season. 33 years of age, had a company. I was experiencing the closeness of Father, Son, and Spirit in the very charismatic ways, just liquid love. It was beautiful.
Yep.
And one day I'm out for a run, and I heard my Heavenly Father say, I'm going into hiding, and I'm removing all your friends.
Wow.
And I rebuked him. I was like, but by the time I got to my house, I knew that was, he had something for me. And I want to say, for those who are listening, if they might be unnerved, I was far enough along in my journey to know that there is no shadow of turning. He doesn't leave.
Right.
So I knew he wasn't leaving, but I will say that for the next 2 years, it was like a faucet got turned off. And it was like, and only in hindsight can I describe it. In hindsight, I can tell you all kinds of encounters, but in the moment, it was 2 years where it felt like he disappeared. He went into the next room or some room a couple miles away, spoke a language I didn't speak in a tone I'd never heard. He disappeared. On top of that, our community completely left. They all moved over the course of the next 6 months. And so for 2 years, I couldn't see him, hear him, touch him, feel him in any way familiar. In those 2 years, 2008 hit, we had a construction-based company. We lost the company. I had lots of reasons, lots of reasons to hear from him, lots of decisions that needed to be made.
Yeah.
That I normally made with him. I had done that my whole life, and he was nowhere to be found as far as I could understand. I'm out for a run 2 years in. I'm listening to a message from Chris Valton, who's a speaker, and pastor over in Bethel.
Yeah.
And Chris tells a story about Graham Cook, who I just had a wonderful conversation with on our podcast.
Nice. So, I'll have to go check that out.
Yeah. Rethinking God with Tacos, by the way, is the podcast.
It's amazing.
Thanks, man. I'm out listening to Chris, and Chris tells a story about Graham Cook. He says Graham is at a conference with a bunch of leaders, and he's eating, and he's not engaging, and he pushes back and yells out into the room, "I don't want to be desperate for God." Goes back to eating. Chris is like, what did that have to do with anything? Eventually gets the nerve of asking somebody, you mean? Graham says this. He says, a relationship where the son is always desperate for the father is dysfunctional. When I heard that, I went, oof, that is for me.
Bro.
Oof. I mean, if you want to talk about a guy in a desperate situation, I was desperate. I couldn't hear him, sense him, touch him, see him. We're losing our company. And all I'd known in my love song to God was desperation. And I'm desperate for you was one of the love songs, and he'd met me there. It was beautiful. So, but that landed. I'm like, well, there's something there for me. A couple more weeks go by, and I'm out for a run, and I can take you to where it was. It's like the faucet got turned on, and boom! All of a sudden, liquid love, his presence, like I'd known it, but even it's just so powerful. And I'm in tears, and he begins to take me through some of the times we've met over the course of my life. And then he brings me to a memory in Bible college where I'd graduated, and they had a thing at Elam where they would pray over the graduated senior, and they would prophesy. The moms, spiritual moms and dads would do this, the teachers, the staff, and the student body would sit and listen. I was newly married. My wife was sitting next to me. I was a senior. They prophesied over me, and Sister Sylvia goes by the moniker sister or brother at that school, right?
Yeah.
And so Sister Sylvia comes over, and she says, Jason, gave me a lot of words, but this is what she said at one point. She said, Jason, I believe God's saying that you see yourself as a spiritual dwarf, but God's saying he sees you as a spiritual giant.
Wow.
And I bawled, but I bawled the kind of embarrassing kind of crying, snot, like, do I look at it? Do I look away? Like this guy's having an existential crisis in front of the whole student body. You know, it wasn't pretty, and really it wasn't pretty because when she said it, I didn't believe it. I wanted it in all of my heart to be true that that's what he thought about me, but I didn't believe it. And so here we are. I'm 35 years of age. Haven't heard from him in 2 years. We were losing our company. We ended up losing our company. We're probably at that point, we went 18 months without being able to pay our mortgage. So we're probably already in a spot where we can't pay our mortgage, at least a few months into that. And he shows up. He's liquid love, and he says, Jason, you remember that time Sister Sylvia Evans said, I see you as a spiritual giant, but you see yourself as a... And I said, yeah, I remember that. He said, well, today he got real stern with me. He said, today you have a decision to make. And I'm going to count, like, you've got a decision to make, son. He said, I have never changed my mind. I've always seen you that way. I will never change my mind. You don't get a say in how I see you. Today you either decide to agree with me or keep living insecure and desperate and anxious. I mean, now I'm crying, but it's the pretty tears. It's the
that's
most beautiful, right? And then he says this. He says, Jason, am I a perfect father? Well, that's an easy thing to answer. I could have
Right.
answered that when I was 5. Yes.
Right.
He said, well, then if there's desperation in our relationship, it's not on my end. And when he said that, I prayed a prayer that shifted everything. I often refer to it as my salvation prayer, the time that I actually came into union and the awakening to his affection. I prayed this prayer, and I can say it 100 different ways now. I've been putting language to it for the last 16 years, but it sounded like this the first time I prayed it. From this day forward, based in the moment I was in, I will never interact with you again based on my need. From this day forward, I will only interact with you based on your love.
Oh, man.
What I was saying was, from this day forward, I will not define reality based on what I'm experiencing, my experience, my perspective. From this day forward, I am resetting my lens. It'll be a Christological lens, and I will only move and have my being based on the measureless nature of your love. So the rest of my life, my job is to unpack how much I'm loved today, and it better be more than I was loved yesterday, right? Like this is the message. God is love. His love is always good, and I exist to grow more sure today than I was yesterday, more sure tomorrow than I am today. And so that's what we've been doing ever since. And along the way, really what I discovered was union. And he began to give language, and then I began to find wherever there was desperation in my life was evidence of a lie of separation that I had been walking with. And so he would continue to bring things to light where I would feel insecure or desperate, and I knew that he literally said desperation is an illegal thing to participate in. Not that you can't feel it, but that it is the road sign to participating outside of the measureless nature of my love. And so I basically, over the next year, I had to retrain my brain, all the wiring in my brain to go, I will not participate. And by the way, we went 18 months without paying our mortgage. We had lots of reasons to be desperate, but it was probably one of the sweetest seasons as I just every day woke up to this deeper discovery of peace. So do you think that's what he was trying to show you? Do you think he needed to kind of withdraw for a little while to get you to really get that, or what do you think the deal was with that? Because I mean, I used to have a shirt and it said one word from God can change your life forever, right? So sometimes as a charismatic crazy and couldn't he have just said that to you, but at the same time not sometimes he knows exactly where we're at, and sometimes we need it done a certain way. Do you think that was the case? Like he just needed you to be in that place so that you could hear it and really get it? Or what do you think that was all about? I think a few things. I think first, he will only do that when you're ready. Anytime that type of thing happens, it's an invitation into rediscovering who he is in a new way. To me, it's the Emmaus Road. It's showing up. He was with me the whole time, but he went incognito. Right. The Emmaus Road to me is a beautiful picture of the nature of a Jesus who walks with us. These guys knew who Jesus was. They'd spent Cleopas and whoever it was, Luke 24. Yep. They knew who he was, but he showed up in skin unfamiliar to them, so their head didn't get in the way of the burning. So he could reintroduce himself to them, and in a way that they would actually be able to receive. They said we had thought he was the one. Well, he was the one, but infinitely better than they had thought. And had he shown up in a way that they knew him, in a way that they had already been talking forever, their head would have gotten in front of their heart. They would have not stewarded the burning. They would have not invited him into the house. They would have not gotten a revelation of the resurrected Christ. Right. And he disappeared from their sight for the same reason. Because had he not disappeared, they would have got straight up into their head with a bunch of more questions. He said, no. I needed to disappear so they can steward that did not our hearts burn within us when he spoke to us on the road. And so revelation then is a heart first, heart, soul, mind, and strength journey. And so to me, if God is going into hiding, it's to reintroduce himself in more intimate ways so that you can actually discover who you truly are in more intimate ways, resurrection life. So that's what it was for me.
Come on, man. And to me, there's nothing more exciting than when you get that revelation. There's a new piece of God you get. And the cool thing, the way my brain works is I believe for all of eternity, we are going to be getting those moments. It's going to be like, oh my gosh, there's another cool part of God I didn't know about. So for all of it's like a little kid on a Easter egg hunt, right? Like they get so excited when they find the chocolate egg. And like, I'm still like that. Like when I remember it was a couple of years ago, it's kind of weird. We didn't have air conditioning in our house at the time. And I sleep like on 10 sort of heat, control. So I was downstairs sleeping in a downstairs bedroom.
For
Yeah.
Americans, that is, what is that? Like 65 degrees, something like that.
Yeah,
I
probably.
don't know.
So it was hot. So I'm sleeping.
Oh,
I'm
hot. Right, right,
downstairs.
right. I
No, it's
got you. Yeah.
super hot. Yeah, so I went downstairs because the downstairs bedroom was a little cooler, and my wife's upstairs, and I'm down reading this book, and all of a sudden God starts showing me stuff about the Trinity, and I got so excited. I came running upstairs, and I burst through the door. She's half asleep. I'm like, I understand the Trinity, and she like it scared her half to death. She's like, what is wrong with you? But I think we're always for all of eternity going to be getting those moments. I
Yeah.
really do. And people think, oh
Yeah.
man, heaven's going to be so boring. It's just, holy, holy, holy. I'm like, no, dude, this is never going to end.
Yeah. Yeah.
This revelation of the beauty of how good he is.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
excited, man.
Yeah, that's that. And you're reminding me, and probably we've come from the same, Bill was very much a spiritual father to me, but he talks about the hiding of the Easter egg for the 2-year-old, opposed to the hiding of the Easter egg for the 13-year-old. The 2-year-old, it's like 2 feet in front of them. The 13-year-old, it's in a tree somewhere.
Exactly.
But it's so that they can find it, and the joy of discovery. For me, man, I had that type of experience when I went and watched Avatar, the first one, and we ended up in a 3D theater. I didn't think I'd want to do it, but I came out giddy. I'm like, that's heaven. I'm going there, wherever that is. I'm exploring, man. It's like, it's the good news, bro. Yeah.
So you get on the other side of this, and now all of a sudden you have this revelation that I'm not going to be posture myself in this place of desperation anymore. I am going to live knowing that you are right there. And is that when this whole separation thing really started to come together for you? That it wasn't real. That this was just all a delusion. We need to get past. I mean, if he holds all things together, how the heck can we get out from under that anyways? But that's where it all began, eh?
Yeah, I just want to address or note the out and the a. It's beautiful. I feel like I've come home for a half.
You have, man. You have. Yeah.
For me, the journey, because I'm a relational theologian, that's how I refer to myself. And I'm thankful to Graham Cook for that term. I've been unpacking that term probably for 15 years. But I'm a storyteller. I'm a creative. I don't get to things academically. I don't get to them through books. It was very lonely until most of my Christian life has been very lonely because I was always a fringe guy, even when I was still trying to figure out, still desperate, living in those desperate states. But I'm a creative, and so I'm an experiential learner, and so. And for me, if it isn't transforming my relationship with my wife and my kids, it isn't true anyway. Like I am passionately focused on what love is and the fact that there is a shadow of turning in love. And so it was a slow unpacking that first needed to take place in me. My prayer for the first year, and it would be prayed 30 times a day in those first months, was I would stop and say, the moment I felt anxious or desperate, and by the way, I said, I will never interact with you based on my needs. So I wasn't bringing my needs to him. I wouldn't pray my needs at that moment. I was like, we're only going to pray I'm going to relearn how I'm praying, how we're going to talk. I'm going to, operate from a measureless realm. Love is a measureless realm. I played a game with my daughter in that season at 5 years of age. I told her I love you to the trees and back, and she to the sun and the moon, and we back and forth, and we were measuring and measuring and measuring, and I got to the end, a litany of my love, a mile long, to the trees and back, moon, stars, to infinity and beyond, the Googleplex. And she looked at me, 5 years of age, all clever. She said, "Daddy, times two." And when she said times two, I heard the gospel. My father said, "That's the gospel."
On.
You think you got your arms around it, and a 5-year-old can blow it up with times two. That's the measureless nature of what you're talking about, the thing we will be discovering for eternity. And so my prayers during that time, as I was discovering that, was I would start to feel desperate, and I would stop. I go, "Father, show me who you are." As Jesus revealed, show me who you are through this. Back then, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have called it a Christological lens, But I did reset my lens. I stopped reading all scripture but the Gospels for 2 years. Didn't tell anybody because I didn't know if I was allowed to do that. Certainly Bible college would have told me not to do that. You're supposed to have a biblical hermeneutic. No, it's supposed to be a Christological one.
Come
And what I
on.
was doing was resetting my lens. I didn't know it, didn't have the language. I've been able to put that around it since. But for 2 years, I would only read the Gospels. When desperation or insecurity, anxiety fell on me, I would stop, say, Father, show me who you are. I would wait till I had a peace, a sense of his affection, and I'd say, now show me how you see me. That's right, I'm a spiritual giant. I'd come into agreement with that. Sometimes it took a minute. Sometimes it didn't take long at all. All right, now show me how to perceive this moment, this person, this conflict, this fear. And I would do that 30, 40 times. I wouldn't get out of bed. I mean, we turned the phone off because the company was dying, and I was getting bill collectors and calls and all that stuff. And so that was practiced. And then as I practiced, I began to write. Because I'm a writer, I'm a creative, and I discovered my biggest conundrum in the Gospels was I had been given penal substitutionary atonement, and my God, why have you forsaken me was a sticking point I couldn't figure out. And one day I was reminded of Psalm 22 being Davidic prophetic psalm, which I learned in Bible college. Of course, they didn't teach me the truth of it.
Right.
It was just there to prove that Jesus was the Son of God, as opposed to proving the Father didn't look away.
Right.
And when I saw that was the last aha moment. And I would say at that moment, I was able to firmly say, I will not be moved from the idea of separation. And you begin to put language around it. And it was a slow evolving. Eventually you start to, there's separation in my understanding of evangelism. Oh, there's separation in my understanding. I need to rethink what that looks like. Christ is in all. Oh, there's separation in my understanding of, hell. Well, that got me kicked out of a church, right?
Right.
So for me, it was a very natural progression until about 5 years ago. At that point, I had written Prone to Love. I also wrote a book called God Is Not in Control, which this whole story is better than you think. The idea that the sovereignty of God is not discovered in control, but at a cross where he laid his life down. And so the short version of that book is control is perfect if Jason's driving a car. It's a great word. Jason's in control of the car, works great. But apply it to a relationship, it's the antithesis of trust. Jason's in control of his wife. Jason's in control of his kids. It doesn't work. And so I was running again as a relational guy, and I was unpacking things. So that was me going, I've got to figure out the sovereignty of God. And as I did, I wrote. And then we launched the podcast. Up till then, I thought I was the only one. I thought, man, I knew John a little bit, but I hadn't been tracking. And I knew of Baxter, but I hadn't been tracking. And when we launched the podcast, it culminated at the same time as us getting kicked out of our church.
So hold it now. When you say you lost the podcast,
go ahead. Yeah,
you lost the podcast. What do you mean? Did you have a different one?
Launched.
Oh, launched. Okay, you launched the podcast. So how many years ago was that?
5+.
Okay.
And it culminated in I had been writing articles and books, and we had a ministry, and some people would have me come speak, not very many, but and I would pull my punches, but I wrote a response to someone in our ministry side. They asked me, I'd written an article about not being a universalist, and if you read between the lines, I was actually telling you I'm probably a universalist.
Right.
But the title, I was basically saying I'm not a universalist if you perceive me through a Calvinistic lens, because it's just another deterministic approach.
Right.
I am engaging with the idea that the cross was a universal act. So it was kind of. It was me tiptoeing around the waters, and it raised the question about hell, which I don't know what I was thinking. I actually wrote a response that was very tame by the standards of today, where I'm at today. But I knew that it was probably a little bit out there for the people we were with. But I got a green light from my wife, and that's how I navigate. I'm like, baby, should I? And she's like, oh yeah, that's tame. That's nothing. Long story short, 2 weeks later, we were kicked out of our church. And we were really involved. My wife was on staff. My daughter was on staff. There was nothing we could say to make. It was just,
and was it just the standard stuff? Like, you just really believe the cross was bigger than we've given it credit, that, Jesus actually, his work was as big or bigger than what happened through Adam? Like, it wasn't anything bizarre, right? It was just
and it wasn't even that in depth. It was literally, what if hell is an eternal conscious torment? And of course, nobody could hear anything other than Jason doesn't believe in hell. Even though I would sit in the room and go, I believe in hell. I'm just rethinking it through the lens of restoration. I'm rethinking it through the lens of love.
Right.
So what could that mean? So you don't believe in hell? I don't know how many times I can say this at the article. What can I do? There's nothing I could do. Add to that, there's always some political factions, and I didn't know there were some guys that had been worried about me for a while, and they used this as a smoking gun to leverage in a way that forced the pastor's hand. There was a new building, a new fund, lots of other things going on, always is. But it was painful, especially for my family. But what it did was, I'm a relational guy, and we had already decided to launch the podcast. I mean, we might have even done one or two. I don't think so. I think we decided to do it, come up with the name, but hadn't done it yet. This happened, and then we launched the podcast. Because I'm a relational guy, if we'd been at the church, I would have, half the guests I had on early on wouldn't have had on, because I would have moved at the pace of the people I'm with.
Right.
But because I was no longer connected, I couldn't step on anybody's toes. I'd already stepped on them all. I mean, my first guest was, I think it was Brad Jerzak, Paul Young, and Baxter Kruger.
Wow, those are some pretty big guys for a first guest.
Well, it did help that we launched it during COVID, and those guys, they love to talk, and they hadn't been able to talk for a while.
There's no travel. They weren't preaching for a bit, so they're looking for.
I got them. I was like, I'll let you talk for an hour and a half. They were like, oh, thank God.
Thanks for listening to Jesus the Legend. If this episode spoke to your heart, please subscribe, like, and share it with someone who would be encouraged by the message. Be sure to tune in next time as we continue the conversation about the beauty of Jesus and how the gospel is even better than we could ever imagine.